Episode 5, Paul. I keep saying this every week. We've had some really good discussions, and we've got some good comments from people as well. Although I think the comments this time around were more general. So I think in those first couple of weeks, we got a few challenging questions that we responded to. People are kind of settling in. I think our audience is kind of settling in, and maybe we're getting more comments from people who are generally agreeing with us. So what I wanted to do, Paul, is just kind of read to you some of the comments that...
You can look at them.
Yeah. Every week we always kind of begin by going over some of the comments that we received. But like I said before, we didn't really get a lot of people disagreeing with us like we've had in the past. And by the way, the people that we've had disagreeing with us usually gave us very insightful comments and gave us good conversations, good things to talk about in response. But a lot of what we got this time, a lot of people just simply agreeing with us. And so I'd like to read some of those comments. One of them was, social media has really made life look perfect, even when it is not. And at the end of it all, every young girl, boy, whatever, they want to have that same perfect life. This is so true.
Yeah, and it helps to get such comments because while we discuss the same topic of social media, we said this kind of platform helps us to not feel alone or awkward because of our views, because you always find people who are like-minded, who feel like you. So it's interesting how people who are more in path of morality are becoming the minority, at least about being outspoken. When you're being blatant about facts of life and objective, it helps to get people who actually believe like you.
Yeah.
And yeah, true, social media is setting a life that is perfect, but life is imperfect, and that's the perfection of life anyway. Ironically, that's what makes life perfect, because it's not perfect. You don't always get things the way you want them to be. They say even the model on the TV would like to look like the model on the TV, but they can't.
Right. Even the ones you see in the magazines, they're photoshopped. So
yeah, they want to be like the one in the magazine, but then
the real model in that magazine doesn't look like that in real life either.
She also fantasizes about what she looks like in the magazine.
All right, second comment, Paul. The superpowers continue bullying traditional African countries to abandon our good values for a few dollars. In the spirit of freedom, they have become oppressors.
Oh, yeah, and we had some news today. The Supreme Court stood by our bill
in Uganda,
and the anti-gay whatever.
6-0. It was 6-0.
Yeah, it was shocking given that there was superpower money and threatening to take away to not grant visas to these people. But yeah, they stood their ground because, much as some of these cultures may be good for those people out of our country, but for us, we don't believe they are good for us. And at least we stood our ground, and that was a step in the right direction. I think, Bob, at some point I was telling you about the lady the bathroom incident. I told you if she had the case in the Ugandan courts, maybe she would win. And looks like she could win. Yeah. She has a fair chance here.
So I was talking about a case in the U.S. where there was an 80-year-old woman who complained at a YMCA because there was a biological male who identified as a woman who was undressing in a locker room in front of girls. And she went to complain, and these were underage girls, these were children. She went to complain, but the response to the YMCA was to expel her. And this 80-year-old woman, who is now 82, is suing the YMCA. We were talking about whether or not she would win. We were speculating in the U.S. she probably wasn't going to win, but if the case happened in Uganda, she would win. And it kind of looks like that.
Yeah, maybe she has a high chance.
She would have a high chance of winning in Uganda if that actually happened here. Although I think it's unlikely that would actually happen here in Uganda.
Very unlikely.
Yes, but very unlikely. Yet, I should say. Paul's talked about before, Uganda is being influenced slowly by what's happening in the West. And of course, the West is pressuring through, because as we've talked about before, Uganda is a poor country. The West kind of uses the money as a weapon, saying, okay, if you want our money, you have to accept our LGBTQ values.
It's just poor according to your Western metrics, but then Uganda is blessed, That's why it's called the Pearl of Africa. The lands are fertile, we are good with agriculture, we have a few minerals here and there. We shall be refining oil soon. We're not as poor as it looks, Maybe even the idea of Uganda being poor is a political gimmick or something. It's not about just feeding us money, it's also international trade. If you don't do things you don't dance to the tunes of some of the superpowers, they could put embargoes, bans on your products, so you may actually not do well on the world market.
So we did get another comment, Paul. It was very brief. May God save us all.
Yeah. So save us from, I guess, talking about wokeness and where it's taking us. Yeah,
we're at wokeness, and again, we have to probably keep saying this because somebody might just be seeing this video, hasn't watched our other videos. As you said several times in previous videos, wokeness in and of itself is a good concept. It's just basically to be alert and aware to issues of social injustice, which is a good thing. And so when wokeness started, it started as something good, but it is being hijacked by these other agendas that are actually a malpractice of wokeness. And if you want more clarification on what we mean by that, you can go back and look at our previous videos.
You could as well comment on them.
But it's interesting. I want to focus on this comment though. May God save us all. So somebody is lamenting all of these problems and is in a sense praying for God to save us from all of this. And it kind of leads to a question that's popping into my head, Paul. It leads me to wonder about, could it be possible that as society is becoming more and more secularized, that people are looking for meaning in other places, and this is why we're running into all of these other problems, because it's leading to emptiness in people's lives, where they're looking for meaning. Like, for example, why is there so much obsession now with identity and with affirming identities? Because maybe people don't have their identity in God, so they don't have meaning that extends beyond themselves, so they have to find that meaning within themselves. And so they create these artificial lives on social media. And so they create this focus on their identity and how it's so important for them to have you affirm their identity to give them meaning or validation. And I'm wondering, Paul, how much of this has to do with the absence of God that we're seeing more and more of in society.
Yeah, I think it started from the place where religion or belief in God or fellowships, whatever it is, has been demonized in a way because it had morality in it. Most of religion, whether it's Buddha, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, or whichever that you know about, has a lot of morality. The world is anti-morality right now. We're reaching a place where we'd rather be permissive while people doing whatever they want. I think earlier I talked about freedoms, and so given that wokeness is advocating more for freedoms, so we want to be so free that we are free to be immoral. So in the end, we're getting into this place where we are watering down the values of whatever comes out of following God, whether it's religion, whether it's belief, faith, and whatever. So it's being watered down to create a permissive society, and yeah, we are reaping the benefits. The world is going in the wrong direction. Everyone can see it, but then we are not allowed to talk about it. Yeah, because what these people did first was to weaken the idea of God by weakening religion, watering it down in all the various ways that we probably find ourselves talking about today.
If you lose God as a foundation, you lose any source of morality. Everything just simply becomes relativistic. It becomes subjective. Morality becomes subjective. If you don't have a basis of morality, then anything kind of goes. But of course, I know on a practical level, they won't necessarily argue that anything goes. They have a sense of morality. But doesn't that actually show that there is something that's giving them that sense of morality? Because why would they have a sense of morality even though there's no source for it, unless there is something that is a source for it?
There should probably be an explanation for these innate ideas of morality. There should probably be an explanation, and if we don't have an explanation, sometimes the explanation that we can have is that there's a supreme being or a supreme deity that is overall. And
what other source of morality is there? It can't come from within ourselves, because nothing that comes from within us is objective. It's always subjective. You can't get morality from within ourselves. Another thing I wanted to talk about, Paul, is the tendency that exists within the scientific community to not believe in God to a greater extent than it is in the general society. So a larger proportion of scientists do not believe in God than the proportion of people within the general society. Now, I want to talk about this, but I want to talk about it in a way that maybe I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on this. I want to discuss a study that was done both in 1914 and in 1996. In 1914, this study was performed by a psychologist by the name of James Luba, who had sent a survey out to 1,000 scientists. And he had asked them various questions about their belief in God. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in a God that you can pray to? Do you believe in a God who will answer your prayers? Do you believe in life after death? All these questions, maybe this isn't the exact wording of the questions, but he explored these kind of questions. And when the results of the survey came back, 40% of scientists believed in God, 40% did not, and 20% did not know. And so the scientific community was basically split on this question, which if you look in the general society, the percentage of people who believe in God is of course much higher. What James Luba hypothesized, and this was at the beginning of the 20th century, this is around 1914, James Luba hypothesized that as scientific understanding continued to grow, the belief in God would decrease among scientists. Well, in about 1996, an historian of science by the name of Edward Larson decided to test James Luba's hypothesis. So he sent the same survey out to 1,000 scientists, asked the same questions, and the results came back. 40% believed in God, 40% did not believe in God, and 20% were unsure. It was basically unchanged. So the general trend of scientists being split on the question of God remained true, but all of the advances in scientific understanding over the 20th century did not change the rate to which scientists believe in God. We're people who are scientifically minded people, physical sciences, social sciences, and we would definitely lean on the side of those who believe in God. So I kind of want to explore this question a little bit, Paul, of number one, why do we think that there's a larger tendency on the part of scientists not to believe? But then at the same time, why do we think that that trend or that proportion or that percentage doesn't change? Half of the scientists still believe in God after 100 years from the early 20th century to the later 20th century when there was tremendous growth in scientific knowledge and understanding. But the belief in God among scientists remains stable.
We've been talking about narrative, if it's just a narrative, that's what goes. I think this would also apply to this scenario. Because the fact that these two different experiments or research work that was done, they have similar, technically identical results. 40-40, 20, they don't know. So that means it's 50-50, technically.
Yeah.
But why is it that what's sold out is that scientists are anti-God? Why is it easier for people to believe that scientists are anti-God when they're actually not? Because, I think in the end it fits in with the idea of narrative. So why? Like my point earlier was the idea of God, a supreme being, we can tie it to morality. Where the wokeness campaign has gone wrong is that it's promoting immorality. What will check the immorality, what will check the movement would be something like God. There's a consequence for immorality. So what do? They make sure they try to slur the idea of God. They water it down so that it has no value or it has no, kind of impact. So basically, let's kill the idea of God. Let's cause doubt in the idea that there's a God so that we can have more space to spread our narrative and check. The argument about God's existence or his inexistence is an argument that will take a long time. You can't really finish that. But I was having an argument with Bobby earlier. There's a scientist called
Pascal. We're talking about Pascal. Pascal's wagering.
Blaise Pascal. Yeah. So he was basically he's talking about. He's a French, he's a philosopher. Other people call him a mathematician. Other people call him a probabilist, something like that. Yeah. He says that so imagine God exists, and imagine God doesn't exist.
If God doesn't exist, you haven't lost anything by not believing in him. But if God does exist and you don't believe in him, then you've lost everything. So it's better to wager on God. But I think Paul and I, we had a little bit of a disagreement. A friendly disagreement, not a bad disagreement, but a friendly disagreement about how credible we thought that argument was.
And it also shows that it's okay to disagree. It's not like we have to agree with everyone all the time. That's what you're trying to say. It's healthy to actually disagree. That's why we don't understand why the woke people don't hate people who disagree with them.
We don't hate each other because we disagree. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of Pascal's wager, but I think Paul, you're kind of more sympathetic towards the argument.
So now, like me, I'm a Christian. Christianity would believe that if you don't believe in Christ, that he's the Son of God, he died and rose again, and all that, you don't believe in God, basically, then you're going to lose it all at the end. But then, if at all there's no God at all, then there's nothing to lose. You're still dead, something like that. So I would rather bet on believing than not believing. I'm going to operate on an assumption that we tend to have an emptiness, we feel something is missing when we don't have a place that we believe in. There's always those unanswered questions about life, meaning to life, I've been there. I've been in a place where I got to that place where I was agnostic, where I'm like, God exists maybe. But then if this question is bad questions, okay. So, but then if God exists, then why are these kind of people suffering? Yet He created them. Then why is there Satan? Why, if God is strong, why would He do it? Almighty, why would He do this? Why? But then I may not get the answers regardless, but then it didn't help being in that place, because I just had more confusion. I just felt more empty. I just felt more unfulfilled until I had to, buckle down. That's where Pascal comes in. I'm like, okay, I probably have to just choose sides, whether I believe or I don't. It didn't help to be in the middle. So I had this empty hole. The shape of that emptiness is God. When God fills it, then you probably feel more of purposeful. You feel like your life has a direction. And probably I feel that now. I feel like probably I have some direction in my life. That's why I subscribe to Pascal. I'm like, okay, let me give it a gamble. It's all compromise, we reach a point of compromise, and like, okay, and like they say, ignorance is bliss. So the less you know, the less you have to even compromise. Some people just believe, just like they believe full time. But then the more you get to know things, the more you get exposed, the more you have doubts. And that's where you have to get a point of compromise. Like, okay, you know what? This is this. Yeah. And before we even sign up, I'm in Uganda. Basically, Ugandans have existed for as long as Americans have existed. That's what I believe. In Egypt, people have been there. People have been in Turkey, Yemen. People have been all over the world for the last thousands of years at least. But they've always had traditional religion. And if you go down to the cores of all these traditional religions, they believe that they were the supreme being.
And it's universal, the whole entire world. Yeah.
So until your people of your skin color came and taught us about Christianity, all that, there was still a concept of God here.
Yes.
So the fact that this concept was universal even before Christopher Columbus discovered America, or how in Uganda we have John Speak. They say John Speak discovered the River Nile. How? How did you discover it?
How did you discover it? Yeah.
The source of the Nile. How? How did you discover it? Where the source of the Nile is, there are Ugandans who stayed there before him. So how is it that someone who came from England discovered it? Even when different religions came to Africa, we already believed in God. The fact that we already believed in God, and it was already a universal concept that all different cultures, different tribes where we were at, like 5,000 years back, we still believed in God, one way or the other. How do you then say that there is no God? Yet, even before human beings made contact with the outside, what they call the outside world. Now, for us, America is the outside world. Americans would look at Africa as the outside world. Even before that contact was made, and we started sharing these ideas of God, we already had it. So, who put that idea in the different territories?
He has put eternity in our hearts. There's actually a book by a scholar. His name was Don Richardson. He wrote a book called Eternity in Their Hearts. And basically what he does is he makes an argument for the existence of God based on the fact that the God concept is universal everywhere in the world. And in fact, he even shows how Christian missionaries, when they go into places that are unreached, they look for the concept of creator God or of God that is already in their culture. It already exists, and you can always find it because it's in every culture. It's universal. How did it get there if God doesn't exist? But anyways, that's an interesting book, Paul, if you haven't read it, if you're interested.
Yeah, I'll probably look at it.
Yeah. So, are we about at the end of it here, Paul?
Yeah, basically, I feel I've exhausted what I want to talk about, unless you're something.
Yeah, I've pretty much. I think this has been another good discussion. We're not always sure. We come up with like a general idea of what we want to talk about every week. We have like a general kind of outline and direction, but we don't always know the specifics of where it's going to go.
We can't say that we are accurate by whatever we say, or that whatever we say is gospel truth.
Yes.
We're just airing our opinion, and yours as well is welcome. You're welcome to disagree with us. Yeah, we just want dialogue. We're just creating a space for open dialogue. That's why we call ourselves free to speak. I'm free to speak how I feel about things. Yeah, and because we don't want to be suffocated just because there's a woke culture or a woke mindset that we have to subscribe to, and then we're walking on eggshells. No, so for us, we're trying to break away from that, and let's step on those eggs and crush them.
Yeah.
Yeah.